Welcome to the DNX podcast, the number one resource for entrepreneurs, nomads, and impact-driven souls. And I am your coach, Sylvia Christman. Welcome back, everyone. I'm here today with Chip Conley, who is the founder and CEO of Joie, which is a hospitality company that is the second largest boutique hotel company in the US, but he's also the head of global hospitality and strategy for Airbnb. I'm so excited that we could make the time. So we actually met a couple of weeks ago in the mountains in Eden, and you were sharing your insights on wisdom at work. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I was a longtime boutique hotelier who'd sold my company right around my 50th birthday. I ran it for 24 years as the CEO and founder. And I didn't know what was next. There's a great movie by Robert De Niro and Anne Hathaway called The Intern. And he says a musician doesn't retire. He or she quits when there's no more music left inside of them. So at age 50, I knew I had a lot of music inside of me. I just wasn't sure where to share it. And it was about that time, around as I turned 52, that the three co-founders of Airbnb, who were all 21 to 23 years younger than me, asked me to join them to help Airbnb become a global hospitality brand, even though at that time we were a small tech startup.
Very cool. And so what did that mean to you to join a team of people that were significantly younger than you?
You know, it's funny. When they first approached me, Brian said, "I want you to be my mentor." Brian Chesky is the CEO and co-founder, and I want you to be head of hospitality. And the truth is that in both of those roles, about a week into it, after I started, I wasn't really sure if I was cut out for either role. First of all, on the mentor side, I did know that there are things I could teach Brian, but the first day I was at Airbnb, I was 52. I'm in a tech company. I'm twice the age of the average employee. And I've never been in a tech company before, so I didn't understand the lingo. So I felt as much like an intern as I did a mentor. And that's when I really realized, gosh, the modern elder, not the traditional elder of the past, the modern elder is a curious learner as much as they are a wise teacher. And that helped. And then on the hospitality side of things, frankly, all of my knowledge, not all, most of my knowledge that I learned in the bricks and mortar traditional hospitality world didn't really matter in home sharing. It doesn't matter how many rooms can a maid clean in an 8-hour shift for someone who's got a cottage in the backyard and is an Airbnb host. So I really had to really look at what is the knowledge that is valuable and what is the wisdom that I can offer as well. And to be honest with you, while they hired me for my knowledge, my value was in my wisdom. And I can tell you more about that.
Yeah. Well, what was that? What is the wisdom that you found they took away from you or benefited the most?
I think, they thought that hospitality was what it was all about. And I knew something about hospitality. Hospitality is really when someone does something for you, not to you. And I helped ingrain that into the company. But really where I think I could be most valuable was less in my industry knowledge. It was certainly in my industry contacts that helped. But it was more in my emotional intelligence and my leadership intelligence. And, it's hard for a person to say about themselves, I have high EQ, which is what, a shorthand a way of saying emotional intelligence. But the truth is, the longer you've been on this planet, you can't necessarily increase your IQ, but you can increase your EQ. And the EQ that I was able to bring to the table was to help Airbnb teams know how to collaborate better. And understand how leaders can learn how their leadership style has an enormous emotionally contagion effect on everybody around them. And also strategically, I was the head of strategy for the company. But initially it wasn't clear to me. They needed to know my strategy, strategic thinking, but it was very valuable as well.
Interesting. So would you say, let me reframe that. What do you think are the common mistakes and needs that a young leader of a tech company or somebody who's an innovator, what kind of wisdom do they need, or what is it that you offer to them in particular that they don't even know?
I think a lot of times in very tech specific industries or tech specific businesses, there's a sense that the people who are going to be most successful and effective are those who understand the technology the best. Now, there's some truth to the fact that if you understand the technology well, it will help you to succeed. But the blinders that the person's putting on, let's say a young founder or a young leadership team, is just because people understand the technology well doesn't mean they understand how to implement it, sell it, market it, and create teams that collaborate well to effectively operationalize and optimize that technology. And so I think the key to learn is that, there are a lot of people out there who may have old school knowledge that's not all that important. My old school hospitality knowledge wasn't important, but my leadership knowledge, or what the difference between fact knowledge and process knowledge. Fact knowledge means the facts that you need to learn. And frankly, you can learn a lot of those things on Google, just going into a search engine. But process knowledge means, how do you get things done? What's the best process to get something done in a way that is utilizing other humans? And that's why the emotional intelligence and collaboration skills are important. And so I think that what I would just say to young entrepreneurs, young tech leaders out there is, think of age diversity as important of a diversity as gender or race, because having a different mind in the room who has a different perspective helps you to make sure you don't have groupthink.
Interesting. Yeah. So what makes a very effective leader, in your opinion?
I'm actually working. LinkedIn asked me to write a weekend essay on is there a perfect age for the most effective leader? And I actually don't think there is. I think it's really the skill set, but I think there's some skill sets that are better suited for younger versus older. I think some of the things that make a perfect leader or an amazing leader when they're younger is the level of enthusiasm and single-mindedness of focusing on a new concept, a new business. It can be the fresh thinking, not being too attached to the way things have been done in the past. I think that, as well as being very purpose driven. There's no doubt that millennials are very purpose driven in their work, and I think it's partly because ever since 2007, when the iPhone came along and smartphones became sort of dominated our lives, there's no such thing as work life versus personal life. I mean, truthfully, it's all sort of mixed together, and therefore, you don't want to go work. You sort of have a job during the day that feels like you hate it and you hate the purpose, and then your whole, all of your interesting life is at night and on the weekends. Well, we work at night and we work on weekends, and sometimes during the day we don't work, we do other things. And so it's just important that purpose is really important. And so I think all of that helps define a great leader who is often might be maybe younger. I think as someone gets older, some of the qualities that I think make for a great leader that older people might be able to have an advantage on are things like emotional intelligence, emotional maturity. That there's tons of evidence that shows the younger adult you are, compared to, say, 30 years later, you have a tendency to actually be more turbulent and more temperamental in your emotions. And it's partly because, frankly, as you get older, you get used to the idea that sometimes things, in the course of your lifetime, how important is this particular thing? When you're younger, everything seems like it's the most important thing in the world. And so that level of emotional moderation is really helpful in a small company or a fast-growing company, because sometimes it's the emotional amplitude and how crazy it feels that actually gets accentuated by maybe a CEO or a leader who is just over the top in their emotions. That actually can be a negative. So I think emotional moderation is helpful. I think the contacts you've created over a course of a lifetime, there's no doubt one of the greatest things I had that I could offer Airbnb was a collection of contacts in the travel industry that the company didn't have. And then I think finally, One of the things that's nice about being an older person in a young person's workplace is the young people don't see me as competitive. They see that each other is competitive, and therefore there can sometimes be some resentment toward each other. But the older person is almost like, the camp counselor, the person that they can go talk to about stuff and not feel like, as long as the person's confidential, not feel like they're telling their enemy or their competitor in the workplace something that will be used against them. And so I think being that confidant was very helpful for my team and for lots of people at Airbnb who asked me to be their mentor.
Yeah. That is so fascinating. So what would you recommend to somebody that finds themselves in a similar position, that they're in a different phase of their life? They're older, they've accomplished what the things that they want to accomplish, but they feel like they have information and wisdom that they would like to impart on younger generations. What would you recommend they do? And how do they get started?
The older person or the younger person?
The older person.
Well, I think the thing to look for is, where is it that there's disruption happening in an industry that you know well? And the disruptors are often going to be younger people. And the key is for you to be extremely curious and open-minded about the disruption. I mean, there's a lot of people in my industry, the hotel industry, who could never have worked for Airbnb because they just didn't respect Airbnb's home sharing business plan. So if you want to go work for a bunch of young people, but you don't respect them as people or their business plan, that ain't going to work. But what can work is you could use your knowledge and background as a real help. And so seek out young people who are starting businesses in your industry where you could potentially be a knowledgeable industry expert, but one who actually is open to evolving your knowledge for the changing landscape. But also find a place where it's really clear that diversity is important to the organization. Most companies, most young companies, are very specific about the fact that they are really about diversity and inclusion for gender and for race. But often they don't think about it for age. So you could be, as the older person, the one who sort of says, well, have you ever imagined a diversity plan for people who are older who can actually bring a little bit of wisdom to the table, but not just wisdom, but also curiosity? Because a modern elder is as much a curious soul as they are a wise person. So the other aspect is like diversity and inclusion, because many young companies are really good at looking at gender and race diversity, but they haven't actually even imagined having age diversity on their teams. And there's a huge amount of value in having age diversity because it helps not only have another mind at the table who's different than you, so you don't get into groupthink, but also, especially if you're actually, if your ultimate consumer is a broad collection of people at all ages, and you're a bunch of 25-year-olds in a room all working on this, you don't have a certain part of your consumer base in the room with you. And someone who's 45 or 50 or maybe even older could actually offer that. So just know diversity helps because it helps to allow for a broader and diverser collection of ideas.
Interesting. So if you're a younger person, what would be a way to find an elder, a modern elder to join to your team?
I know it's a hard line. Let me start by saying there's a big difference between elder and elderly.
Right. Is there a message board where you can say seeking modern elder?
You know what? That's my hope. My hope is we create something where people say, yeah, I want one of those modern elders. How can I find one of them modern elders? I love it. I have gotten a few emails already from people who are younger, and my book's not even out yet. So that's great news. So long story, look for, first of all, ask around. Between, it literally could be a friend, could be somebody in the company. Let's say you have 12 people in your company now, and they're all generally between age 22 and 35. Yep. Within that group of people, there may be somebody in your company who knows someone a family member or a friend who has a family member who's just a wise person. They may be wise in general, or they may be specifically wise about the industry knowledge that you have. And I would say that would be a great thing to do. Another thing to do is to go to a variety of industry events. If you're disrupting an industry, one of the things that you might do is go to some of the industry events in that industry, like the Airbnb founders if they could do it over again, they would have started going to San Francisco Hotel Association meetings just to start meeting people in the industry, even before they met me. Once they met me, I could help them with that, and I brought them to those meetings. The value in going to those meetings is you're the villain when you're the disruptor if they don't know you. Once they know you, they start to actually have a little bit more respect for you. And you may find people at those association events who are really wise and knowledgeable, and you want to bring them into your company, and maybe 25 years older than you. So that's what I would recommend.
That is fascinating. So this is a very important question. So let's say you are a young female founder disrupting a space. And so with that come the typical obstacles of having a hard time being taken seriously to begin with. What would be your advice for them to find a modern elder to join their team that might be open-minded enough to understand the obstacles female founders typically encounter?
Yeah, I love that question. And, the modern elder they may find might be an older woman or an older man. I'll tell you one quick story. It's in my book, Wisdom at Work, The Making of a Modern Elder. There's a company called, it used to be called One Page. Now it's called Sensia, Censia. The founder, Joanna Riley, was in her mid-30s, and she founded it. She's really smart, incredibly smart around technology. But it was really clear to her that she was a marketing person, she was a visionary person, but she was not an operator, had no finance background. So ultimately, she hired a headhunter, which a lot of people can't afford, but in some cases you can. Sometimes headhunters or executive search firms are not that expensive, especially in particular industries. The ones that are not global companies. And she had her headhunter look for somebody who could actually be her her modern elder. And she found a guy who was 30 years older than her, who was in his mid 60s. So he's basically like, he could be old for easily her father, but potentially even her grandfather, if had some hanky panky in teen years happened. Meaning that, the bottom line is people older than you are often, a generation or two older. In this case, what he brought with him was gravitas. Gravitas meaning there was an element of, this is not somebody who is going to join a startup and join a female startup owner if he didn't believe in her. So the endorsement that came by the fact that this guy joined and was very well regarded out there in the world and was really interested in partnering with her, not actually telling her what to do, not being her boss, but literally helping to support her to become the fastest growing, CEO out there, was part of the reason it worked so well. And so I would just say, whether it's finding a headhunter or whether it's going to an industry event and finding people there who are older than you. But I actually think having a woman, young CEO and having a woman older leader is such a valuable thing too. And I've seen many examples of this, partly because the path that they have been on, that older woman, is so valuable to the younger woman to just understand what's ahead of her. Even though there's maybe less sexism today than there might have been 20 years ago in the boardroom, it still exists. And so having another woman there just has that sense of female empowerment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know that from my own experience that my mother who is a trailblazer, I'm going to call it that. She will often tell me that things have not changed as much as we think they have, which can be frustrating, but at the same time, she can also offer information to me that still is very relevant and helps me understand how to position myself in the workplace and in boardrooms, for sure.
That's good.
So thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate this. Love the wisdom that you had to share. When does your book come out?
It comes out September 18th and 20th in the US and UK, and then soon after that in most of the EU countries in a variety of languages.
Wonderful. So what we're going to do is we're going to post the link to your book below here, below the podcast. And so that way people can get in touch with you and get this book themselves. I know I'm going to get it and I'm going to send it to my parents because I think they'll find it very, very valuable. Thank you again. Thank you for making the time.
Thank you, Sylvia. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Before I leave you, I want to invite you into my world. Join us at the DNX Festival in September in Lisbon. If you go to our website and use the promo code podcast50, you get an extra 50 euros off your ticket. And subscribe to this channel and leave us a review if you can. We will review these frequently, and you can leave us a question that we will answer live online. Until next time.